I'll give you my opinion. I'm not going to be able to get every single one of his points. But going with his life found on Mars analogy, with that type of reasoning that you have, I'm going to assume that you don't trim your bushes or cut your grass. And further, I'm going to assume that you're against chemotherapy for cancer patients because according to your definition of what is life, all this chemotherapy kills live things. So there's a fallacy in that argument. One of your other arguments was that it's a consensus that life begins at conception. And I'm not really sure like where you found that there's a consensus that life begins at conception, but there has been no consensus that life begins at conception. The real argument here is not when life begins or when life doesn't begin. I'm not really interested in what you think when life begins. The real argument here is that some people believe life begins at one point, other people believe that life begins at another point. And this is based on either their moral beliefs, their religious beliefs, whatever. But you can't dictate law on someone's moral and religious beliefs about when life begins. And further, your president, Matthew Jarson, he said in the opening argument that state cannot punish someone for doing something they believe is morally correct or doing something based on their religion. Well, a lot of people's views on when life begins comes from their moral and religious convictions. And so how can you outlaw abortion? Or if abortion is outlawed, you would then be criminalizing or punishing someone for doing something based on their moral and religious convictions. So I'm not really understanding how one person on the Republican side says, no, you can't punish someone for their moral and religious decisions, but another side is saying, yes, you can, or another person is saying, yes, you can punish someone based on their moral and religious convictions. So I'm not really sure if y'all didn't talk before the debate or whatever. Another thing is, you talked about...
No personal attacks, Destiny.
The other thing that you talked about was double murder and how something can be double murder. Well, the thing with that is, again, men or the person who killed that woman, it was not his right to decide if that was a life inside of her or not. It is her decision to decide if that is a life inside of her or not. Whether it is or isn't, really, you know, it's the woman's decision to decide what is inside of her, if that's alive to her based on her moral and religious convictions or not. And if you say that the cells or whatever, the collection of cells can live outside of the woman's womb, well, I would like to see you go to abortion clinics, wait outside and collect and tell each of those women that you'll take what's inside of them and you'll grow it. Because, no, it cannot live without the mother growing it, whether it's inside or outside of her.
Here's the interesting thing when it comes to this issue. As you noticed, I spent the last 6 minutes or so giving you scientific facts, giving you medical references on how life begins at conception. Destiny has turned it around and turned this into a moral issue. You know, when I was sitting up yesterday until 3 o'clock revising my opening speech, I was fearful of including the excerpt by Mother Teresa because I knew then that it would turn into a religious issue. It is not a religious issue. It's a matter of science. It's biology. It's simple medical science. Doctor after doctor after doctor will come and tell you that life begins at conception. Now, this is where the Democrats counter the argument and say, well, fine, life begins at conception, but is that life human, and when does that become a human life? I could have entertained that question. That was the rebuttal I was expecting, but I guess you didn't do your research properly. You know, when it comes to
no personal attacks.
When it comes to discussing the sphere of, well, she got one, so I wanted one, sorry. When it comes to medical science, the facts are clear, and I won't sit here and continue giving this to you. But another interesting aspect about abortions that I wanted to bring up is the fact that Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was actually a very well-known eugenicist. 80% of all Planned Parenthood abortion clinics are located in minority districts. And here's the astonishing fact. The same amount of black children are born, and that number equates the same amount of black children lost to abortion. Black and Hispanic women are 3 times more likely to get abortions than white women.
Where's the facts for that?
All planned. Oh, it's right here, and I can give you the statistics. Margaret Sanger was infamously well known to say that we should use abortion to weed out the black population. She was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and historically speaking, abortion kills more blacks per year than the Ku Klux Klan has ever did in its entire history of existence. And that's proven fact. Numbers are numbers. When you come and look at the murky historical background of how abortions have been funneled, if you look at Planned Parenthood and the people that are behind its lush leather chairs, behind wonderful mahogany desks, you see racism, you see hatred of life, and you see everything despicable in a human character that you would not want to find roaming on the streets.
Prove it.
Before we go on, I've got to take a minute.
No, I need a rebuttal.
No, wait a minute. I know I'm the monitor of this debate, and I'm supposed to keep my opinions to myself.
Yep.
Do it.
Yeah, do
I'm
it.
going to be a strong man and do just that.
Thank you.
I'm going to do just that. Now, let's get a rebuttal.
Okay, yes, Margaret Sanger was a racist. So were most of the women in the suffragist movement. I am not denying that women can be racist. I'm not denying that the feminist movement was racist. That's why we have something called now critical race theory and women of color feminism and a whole lot of other things. I'm not saying that those women are perfect. Also, I'm not representing Planned Parenthood. I'm representing keeping abortion legal, period. I'm not a representative of Planned Parenthood. There is racism in every aspect of life. So, yeah, there is racism, okay? I find it really funny that Republicans are worried about racism when it comes to abortion, but not when it comes to the killing of blacks in our criminal justice system, or when it comes to killing of our laws against minorities. I just find it really funny that the government or the Republicans have a hands-on approach when it comes to my body, but a hands-off approach when it comes to racism in America. Another thing, you mentioned, and I think something that might, I think that you're like equating a lot of abortion with black people and it's killing black babies and all that. But look at everything else. They get shafted on every other end of society. Education, they get shafted. I don't hear you up here spewing for social programs or funding for education in African American communities or more social programs in African American communities. Also, you say there's scientific facts and you're giving me fact after fact, and you'll find doctor after doctor who says life begins here or there. And I can find you doctor after doctor after doctor who say that life begins on Mars. I mean, there's no consensus in science that what is inside a woman is a human baby. And until we come to a consensus of when life begins or when human life begins, you can't make laws because you think that's when it begins. If you don't want your wife to have an abortion, great. Talk to her about it. Y'all work it out. But you can't tell other people what they can do with their bodies. And it's not scientific fact. You can't tell me that science as a whole has decided when life begins.
Okay.